Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been killed in strikes by the U.S. and Israel on Iran. State TV confirmed the death of Khamenei, who had ruled the Islamic Republic since 1989. But many Iranians have been celebrating his death in at least one city, pulling down symbols of the regime. Supporters of the regime have been mourning him in Tehran and vowing revenge for the attacks that saw him and other senior leaders killed. But President Trump warned against retaliation, saying, quote, "We will hit them with a force that has never been seen before." Let's cross over to Niloofar Gholami from DW's Persian service. Niloofar, how are people in Iran reacting to the news of Khamenei's killing? We've seen some strong emotions from the visuals.
Yeah, millions of Iranians are incredibly happy. For many people, the name of Ali Khamenei is tied to a dark chapter in the history of Iran, and now they are glad that he's no longer there. Last night, thousands of Iranians took to the streets in celebration, both inside the country and in some cities around the world. Many videos have been shared across social media showing people dancing, cheering. I spent the whole night reading messages of celebration from the families of those who were killed during different waves of protests and crackdowns in Iran. They all consider Ali Khamenei directly responsible for the deaths of their loved ones, and they say they feel happy about his death. I've been reading many posts on X simply saying how happy they are, and it was their biggest wish to see the death of the dictator. But despite the sense of joy, many people are still deeply worried about the future, about what happens next and where everything is heading. Some fear a scenario similar to Venezuela, where elements of revolutionary guards, for example, could take control, impose an even heavier security atmosphere, and continue the Islamic Republic in a different form. For now, though, all anyone can really do is wait and see what unfolds. Will the attacks by U.S. and Israel continue or not? Only time will tell that.
I mean, you talk about the future, so I wonder if there is a clear successor to Khamenei. What do we know about the contingency plans of the Iranian regime? Surely they planned ahead, given there was plenty of warning over the last few weeks with U.S. military assets gathering in the Middle East that there could be a strike and that top political leadership could be killed as a result.
No, not yet. At least we don't know at this moment, but it seems that Ali Larijani, Secretary of Supreme National Security Council, and Ghalibaf, Speaker of the Parliament of Iran, have now become key figures of the regime. According to Larijani, a temporary leadership council will soon be formed to choose the next supreme leader of Iran. There have been prior reports saying that Khamenei ordered, if he died, Ali Larijani should assume the leadership. And right now we can say the situation looks like that's exactly what has happened. And,
you know, we've also seen pro-regime rallies taking place in Iran. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Yeah, Iran's state TV has confirmed the killings of like 4 military figures. They are really important figures, but above everything else, Khamenei's death has been a heavy blow for the regime and its supporters. Iranian media have published videos showing groups of supporters of the Islamic Republic in Tehran and few other cities chanting slogans calling for revenge. This is a major loss for the Islamic Republic. And I would say at this point, anything could happen. But this definitely does not mean the end of the Islamic Republic or the complete collapse of the government, at least not for now. The core structure of the system is still in power, and there are no signs of surrender from the military forces. But of course, if the U.S.-Israel attacks continue, that situation could change very, very quickly.
I know this might be very difficult to sort of imagine. It might be hard for you to answer. I mean, with Iranians believing whether they might see genuine freedom or even some form of democracy in the future, is that something in people's minds? Or is there a concern that they will simply see chaos and the rise of another dictatorship following the events of the last 24 hours?
The people of Iran have been waiting for years for a chance to establish a democratic government, but that path is extremely difficult and would require the complete collapse of the Islamic Republic. The system has not been fully overthrown yet. It has lost some key figures in its leadership, but the security and military forces are still there at the top of the power structure. It is still too early, as also you mentioned, to make firm predictions because we have to see how events unfold. I think but this is a very crucial moment for the different opposition groups to finally engage in some serious dialogue and look for a path forward to a fundamental change. Otherwise, the side that remains in power may find a way out of this crisis in Iran, and the Iranian people could lose what many believe is a golden opportunity for them. If they want to have a share in future power, they need to be able to talk to each other now. Otherwise, by staying divided and distant, they will ultimately give the Islamic Republic a chance to recover. Even President Trump has spoken about potential candidates who could take power. And it's not impossible that some of them could come within the Islamic Republic. This is exactly what we saw in Venezuela, and it's precisely the scenario that worries a large portion of the Iranian people who don't want this regime in any form anymore.
Niloofar Gholami from DW's Persian Service, thank you very much for your insights. And we're now joined in the studio by DW, head of our current affairs team, Ibrahim, who has covered the region extensively. Just very quickly, Khamenei dead. What does that mean for Iran? Is there a succession plan in place?
I mean, this is a massive blow to the Islamic Republic. There's no doubt about it. But it's important to emphasize that this doesn't automatically mean regime change. There isn't a clear successor. What will happen now is that a temporary council made up of the president of Iran, the head of the judiciary, and another official will run the country on a temporary capacity until the Assembly of Experts convenes to elect the successor of the supreme leader. But obviously this is happening against the backdrop of a chaotic situation in Iran, unclear who else is dead of Iran's senior leadership. And so it is a chaotic situation, but by no means equal regime change that Donald Trump has declared to be the goal of this operation.
Because he was quite old already, so one would presume that the political leadership had contingency plans in place.
Well, he was quite old. He's also been in charge for more than 30 years. He's been in charge since 1989. And so because of his old age, this is not coming as a complete surprise that they would have to find a successor for him. But of course, getting killed in a joint U.S.-Israeli airstrike, the Islamic Republic's two arch enemies is a humiliating and devastating blow to this regime.
Now, I want to pull out a little bit and ask you about the Gulf states, the Arab states in that area. They host a lot of U.S. military assets. They have been targeted by Iran in retaliation, and this puts them in a very difficult position, doesn't it? Because my understanding is that some of them had started warming relations with Iran, but others, it's always been a hostile relationship to Iran, no?
I mean, the Gulf states are not a monolith, and that certainly applies to their relationship with Iran. So there are varying degrees of closeness among the Gulf states. Oman, for example, which was actually mediating the diplomatic talks between the U.S. and Iran up until last week to try to get concessions on the nuclear file, has quite a good relation with Iran. Qatar has quite a good relation with Iran. And then you have varying degrees of tensions with Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, and so on. But I think what can be said almost generally about the Gulf states is that they don't want this. No Gulf leader wants to see the scenes that we've been seeing over the skies of Dubai, of Manama, of Abu Dhabi, and certainly not over Doha. These are countries that want stability, they want economic prosperity, many of them actually making very real steps towards normalization with Israel in the past years to try and, in their view, create more stability and prosperity for the regions. And these countries, I mean, they barely had a chance to react to the U.S.-Israeli strike on Iran before they came themselves under fire, and then we saw the string of condemnations and fury coming from them. Of course, what Iran says is that they can't reach the U.S. with their strikes. They've been striking Israel in counterstrikes, obviously. So they see the 40,000 U.S. personnel scattered across the region as fair targets. But for the leaders of these Gulf countries, these are, of course, violations of their sovereignty, massive national security threats. Just look at the mayhem that we've been seeing, unprecedented in the Gulf.
I mean, like skyscrapers,
skyscrapers in Dubai.
Tourists. It's a
Exactly.
travel hub, a flight hub.
Exactly. Think about the image that all of these Gulf countries have been trying and working really, really hard to project about themselves into the world for the past decades. And look at these images. These things just don't match up.
And I wonder, was there a small window of opportunity for these Gulf states to try to de-escalate? They have tried to do that between the U.S. and Iran in the past.
I think, diplomacy is certainly on hold here, but we can't believe that it's dead. We have to believe that at some point, some kind of negotiation, ceasefire, de-escalation will be reached, and then you can expect these Gulf countries to then be trying to bring everybody back to the table, because, again, this is nothing that any of them wanted. Like I said, there were these negotiations going on with Oman as a mediator up until last week. It's difficult to even rewind to that last week, but we would hope that at some point diplomacy will gain the upper hand again and there will be some kind of negotiation.
I want to quickly ask about Iran's proxies, such as Hezbollah. How are they responding?
So far, it's been radio silence. I mean, specifically, Hezbollah is in a very, very, very difficult situation. Hezbollah is the Islamic Republic's closest ally and proxy. A lot of funding for Hezbollah has come from Iran. And a few days ago, a senior Hezbollah official was cited saying that they would not intervene in the case of limited U.S. strikes on Iran, but that Khamenei's life, if it comes under threat, would be a red line. And now we've reached the moment where Khamenei has been killed by a U.S.-Israeli airstrike or as a result of this operation. And so all eyes are on Hezbollah now and how it would react. However, Hezbollah has been severely weakened in its war with Israel in 2024. That war ended with a ceasefire in November of 2024. But ever since then, Israel has been continuously violating that ceasefire, striking Hezbollah targets, mostly in the southern part of Lebanon. The country is devastated as a result of this conflict. And so this puts Hezbollah in an extremely difficult position.
Ibrahim, thank you very much. William Alberque is a former NATO official and now a senior fellow with the Pacific Forum. William, welcome. The supreme leader is dead. The U.S. and Israel has been striking targets across Iran. Is there any chance the Iranian nuclear program is finished? That was ostensibly one of the reasons why they decided to do this.
Well, we're still deep in the fog of war as well. We don't really have any assessment of exactly where in the nuclear establishment the United States may have hit, or Israel as well. We know it's going to be a high priority target to hit the facilities where we suspect, for instance, the highly enriched uranium may be buried. And the two new facilities that in open source imagery were spotted over the past few months, one being buried and one at a mountain complex near Natanz. But we just don't know. For the U.S. and for Israel, this is an incredibly high priority target. But I haven't heard anything that gives any confidence in terms of exactly what materials have been hit, what the status is, and what's next on the nuclear program.
If the United States and Israel doesn't manage to achieve their objective of regime change and some form of autocracy remains, does this mean that Iran will triple down on its nuclear program and really pursue nuclear weapons? No?
It's an interesting question. I would say for leadership in Iran, they were already gambling that by making moves towards a nuclear program that they would have leverage in talks. And what they found out was that precipitated strikes both last year and now this year as well. So for them to double down and continue to try, I'm really not sure what the end game would be. For Israel and for the United States, that would pretty much guarantee a further escalation. If there was real suspicion that Iran was currently taking that HEU that they had enriched over the past few years and were trying to build a bomb out of it, I think that would guarantee sort of commando team insertions, incredibly intensive strikes aimed to disrupt that. And I think a lot of our intelligence assets are currently trying to find this material. So if they made such a move, it would precipitate further destruction. Also, even if they were able to assemble one bomb, what would they do with it? Trying to mount that on a large missile would probably, again, gain so much attention. And it really, I think for leadership right now in Iran, the answer has to be pledge to get rid of this stuff, work with the promise the International Atomic Energy Agency full transparency, get rid of this stuff. This is not giving you the leverage that you think it is. Rather, it is guaranteeing regime destruction if you continue down this path.
And if the nuclear infrastructure is destroyed, do you think the U.S. and Israel will tolerate an Iran that's able to at least rebuild its missile and drone programs?
Well, I don't think Israel would. The negotiations in the original Iran deal left Iran free to develop missiles that could threaten the region, which also really, really angered the Gulf states. And we've seen today in Iran's second round of strikes that it appears they're broadening their strikes against the Gulf states. And this is just going to further infuriate them. You can't allow Iran to continue to threaten the Gulf states, to continue to strike facilities, hotels, residential areas within the Gulf states. They really risk a broader coalition of states going after them. And quite frankly, if the Israel factor wasn't so big in these strikes, I think the Gulf states would be applauding attack on Iraq's nuclear program and missile program. So no, I don't think a missile program is something that will if Iran tries to maintain it, will result in lasting peace. Because remember, the Gulf states were against the original Iran deal because it didn't deal with regional missile capabilities.
William Alberque, thank you very much.
Thank you, Melissa.